Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a discussion about G.I. Joe. We're going to be talking about the cartoon show, the comics, the toys and the films. So let me start off by introducing myself. I'm Leo, this is Steve and this is Chris. Now Steve and Chris are both massive G.I. Joe fans and I was myself when we were younger, but here in England, I just better point out to anyone watching outside of England, G.I. Joe wasn't always called that here in the UK. So we'll let Steve go on about that.
So, G.I. Joe is basically, I mean, it started off as a toy line by Hasbro in America. In this country, in England, you had, I mean, originally G.I. Joe was in the 60s, which is like a 12-inch soldier figure. In this country, in England, we know it as Action Man. However, all the characters from what we've been discussing in the film basically have evolved from the 60s incarnation of a 12-inch toy soldier, and then now at Star Wars figure size. Basically, the G.I. Joe characters that we've been discussing came about in the early 80s by Hasbro. They did quite a few lines up until about 1994. Loads of figures, lots of vehicles. A lot of them are very good. I prefer the earlier stuff. Some of the later stuff is a bit, kind of sci-fi, unrealistic. The earlier stuff's a bit more military based and more realistic.
Space Force.
Huh?
Space Force.
That's the English. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm talking about the G.I. Joe, the American. Now, so in this country we had Action Force, which again was an evolution of Action Man. So Action Man was the 12-inch figures, and he had the eagle eyes and the furry hair. I used to love Action Man as a kid, and obviously I liked Action Force as well, which were the 3 1/4-inch figure size, Star Wars figure size equivalent of. And originally they did like a desert rat one. They did a German. They did like a frogman, and some other. I think it was a Royal Marine. Royal Marine. And I think I did a few others, and then they eventually developed like a kind of storyline, a bit like G.I. Joe in America. This is at a similar time, so this was more for a British market, and you had a comic which came out, which is called Battle Action Force, and basically, in America you had Cobra as the enemy, like a terrorist organisation. In England, it was kind of it was Baron Ironblood and his Red Shadows were kind of again another terrorist organisation, and they fought against Action Force, who were like a special military unit, which were made up into sub-units, which was Z Force, which are they were all dressed in like green camouflage gear, and then you had the SAS Force. They all looked like typical kind of SAS guys from 1980, storming the Iranian embassy in London, that kind of thing. And then you have Space Force, which they were all had like little spaceships and kind of a bit Star Trek like. And then you had Q Force, which were like divers, and it was all sea based. And they were great. I liked them as a kid. I preferred the American stuff, so the G.I. Joe stuff.
More points of articulation.
Yeah.
These British ones were like.
Yeah, they were a bit more
like this, weren't they?
A bit more basic. Yeah. They had an arm, so you could hold a gun, but if you didn't want them holding a rifle, they were kind of just sat there like that.
And their rifles never held their.
No.
They never went in properly, did they?
No.
It was kind of the arms were rubbery, so they didn't really grip.
Yeah, the American ones were much better. However, in this country, the characters from G.I. Joe were We had
Integrated
into the UK as well, but again, it was still known as Action Force rather than G.I. Joe.
Yeah, international heroes.
Yeah, as opposed to the real American hero. They also Sunbow released cartoons in the early 80s.
Because talking about cartoons.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Now,
Stealing your thunder.
quite recently, Hasbro have re-released, or they did like 25th anniversary.
You have to skip past the main.
Figures.
Yeah.
I'll go back to that. Okay, but prior to that, so we have there's a vast catalogue of figures of G.I. Joe or Action Force. In America there's a lot more you could get that were available over there than you could over here. One particularly you were talking about was Torch.
Yeah.
That he was
The
never,
Dreadnoks. Yeah.
Dreadnok. He was never available.
Was that the first line of the proper character ones that we had? You had like
The first
you had
line were-
Ripper and was it Buzzsaw, wasn't it? And then you had Snake
Buzzsaw.
Eyes, Flint, Scarlet. They were the first lines of the proper like as you guys know it, G.I. Joe.
No,
Yeah,
you had
Duke,
you had
Duke,
Duke, you had
Gung Ho,
Ripcord, Scarlet.
Gung Ho, you had
Gung Ho.
Airborne.
Oh yeah, oh, yeah.
Airborne,
That's when it was
Breaker.
the red packaging, wasn't it?
I think yeah. For us,
And
Yeah.
Torch would have been
For
in
us
that
it
red
was.
packaging if he was over it.
yeah, for us it was. In
No,
America,
it wasn't,
It
because
was
they-
different. In America, it was different, but yeah, for us it was kind of in Action Force packaging.
Mm.
But
Still like the old action. Man,
and as
you
time
know.
progressed, then it went to it's still called Action Force,
But it was like black packaging.
yeah, and it was the same as the US packaging,
With the
but it just
cartoon
didn't say
version.
G.I. Joe, it just said.
And that's
Action
that line I
Force
was talking
instead.
about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I like them, and I still collect them now because I'm a bit of a geek.
Hence the channel.
Yeah. So yeah, I think they're great, but yeah, I don't know what else you want to say.
Okay, well let's go to Chris. Chris will talk a little bit about the cartoon series. You might have to shuffle over here a bit. I don't think the camera's
Right
quite.
in view.
Not quite.
Yeah, so like Steve had said before, was it Sunbow, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunbow released just after the toy line. They released a cartoon series, which I think ran for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years, and basically, you know, dealt with the stories behind the sort of toy characters, really, and these cartoons were like were similar to sort of like, you know, they were around the same time as the Transformers cartoons,
Yeah.
and they were made by the same people. Similar kind of storylines, I suppose. You know, different universes, but similar storylines. You know, sort of audacious kind of plots by Cobra to take over the planet, and
world domination.
and then like Action Force or G.I. Joe, you know, coming to the rescue. But they were actually quite good. You know, they were a bit cheesy, as all 80s sort of cartoons were. But on the whole, I think they were quite, you know, good viewing. Didn't really see much of them over in this country, though, did we? To be
No.
fair.
You could buy some Action Force videos at the time, but they
But
never had the full
aired-
series.
They were never aired on TV very much, if at
No.
all.
I think they were. I believe it was on like Saturday when they had Whack-A-Day. I believe they had it on there once.
Did they?
The thing is with when cartoons were shown back in these days, they were very inconsistent. I mean, a lot of time they would like chop an episode up into like
Yeah.
5 little 5-minute segments and play them over. That's what they did with
Yeah.
Transformers.
It was the same with that.
You know, so I'm sure it wasn't the TV, to be honest. But you know, it was
I think it was.
obviously a long time ago since any of us have
Yeah,
watched
It
it on
was
the
on that
TV.
Whack-A-Day.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it was probably never as viewed over here as it was over
No.
there.
No, I mean this was G.I. Joe. Really is an
It's an American market,
thing, but obviously it's obviously the British incarnation for quite a long time was called Action Force, as Steve had said, and the difference being it was the international heroes. So a lot of the nationalities of the characters were changed. Flint was your kind of quintessential British character, but obviously he's obviously an American character.
Yeah, so-
Because obviously G.I. Joe is a real American hero, so they're all American.
Yeah, because
So
you did have like I think Dial Tone. I believe he was French. And
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
It was different.
So they had it.
Yeah.
European. So it was the European Union. It was all a bit like that. But you did have Americans in there as well, because Duke was from Boston, Massachusetts. So I always remember that. So
Yeah.
So what about later sort of versions of the cartoons? And stuff?
Oh well, yeah. They did. This was in the sort of early '80s, I suppose, wasn't it?
yeah,
Sort of it's about '84 to about '86, I think. And then
that was before.
was it before that? Yeah. More recently, they've done. They sort of brought it back, haven't they? And they've done a cartoon called G.I.Joe Resolute, which is a lot more. I suppose Steve's was realistic,
Gritty, yeah, I
and
like
gritty.
it. Violent.
So and also it's quite a good story actually. So it's a one-off
But it's good.
kind of story, and it has a sort of
It's very good.
pretty much a conclusion to it as well. It's not going to really continue.
If you haven't got it, buy it.
And no more recently, they've done another one called Renegades, which is a sort of spin-off.
It's Renegades
with
is very
different
much.
animation.
It's
in
kind of like in the vein of the old Sunbow ones, but they brought it more up to date. The characters are a lot younger. They're almost like kind of teenagers in a way, but and you've got like characters like Dr. Mindbender, and he's like some scrawny little guy, as opposed to like some big muscle-bound, bare-chested, camp-looking guy with a tash. But it works. It's quite good for what it is. I wouldn't say.
Just Snake Eyes. I haven't seen that. How does Snake Eyes?
Yeah, Snake Eyes looks the same.
He pretty much looks the same, but a few of them, like Zartan, he doesn't look anything like how he did in the old cartoons at all.
No.
But again, with that, I think again it's like a little unit of G.I. Joes. It's not the whole band. It's kind of like 3 or 4 of them, a bit like the film. So it's
but
kind of
that's
just
a lot of the graphic novels. It's a small unit.
But on the whole, the cartoons.
And there is a toy
I think
line
we're
as
good.
well of the G.I. Joe Renegades, was incorporated into the sort of later releases of following the 25th anniversary figures, where they did they basically did better. The figures are more detailed, but the cards are the same as the original cards that they did back in the 80s. I love them. I think they're great, and I've got all of them apart from 3. I'm going to try and complete the collection, but yeah. So that's. So what would you like to add about?
Well, I was just thinking about the comics. So as Steve alluded to earlier, there was in the UK. We had Battle Action Force, which was the sort of precursor to G.I. Joe, as you guys sort of know today. And at the same time, obviously, you had the G.I. Joe comics. I think they were published by Marvel at the time. So as the Action Force kind of tried to fall in line with the G.I. Joe, they sort of amalgamated it, and you actually had Cobra turn up at the same time. And so you had Action Force, and you had both Cobra and Baron Ironblood's Red Shadows, and they all used to fight each other. So you used to have the Red Shadows fighting Cobra at the same time. So you had 2 sort of terrorist sort of organisations, but there was generally kind of the outgoing was sort of Baron Ironblood. The Red Shadows I used to like were quite cool, to be quite honest, but there you go.
Yeah.
So Battle Action Force was finished, and then we went on to Action Force. But really, this was kind of like really based on the American sort of standard G.I. Joe sort of lines that they had going. Now, like the Transformers comics, comics in England used to come out weekly rather than monthly like they did in the US. So what you used to have was they used to have reprints of the American stories, but you'd also have original stories written in the UK. And to me, they were far better. They dealt. To me, I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean. One of the earliest comics I remember reading of the sort of G.I. Joe style Action Force was one where the G.I. Joes captured, the eels,
Yeah.
They were like the kind of like the frogman of Cobra, and they captured just an eel. It wasn't a special character. He was just one eel, and he beat the crap out of a load of main characters.
It's supposed to be like elite.
Yeah, because the thing was, it was he's just an eel. I remember reading the letters page, and he's just an eel. Goes, yeah, but these guys are like the top trained, and it kind of to me that made you think each one of these they're not just cannon fodder. Each one of these sort of Cobra troopers were proper nails, basically. They were proper dangerous people. So there's one sort of no-named soldier beat up a load of actual proper character G.I. Joes, and that was one of the earliest comics, and that's actually what got me into G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, going to what you said, I like with Larry Harmer, the guy who wrote and came up with a lot of the characters in the comic. I like there's a lot of background to each character, like you were saying about the eels, and it really goes in depth into each character. Linking it in with the figures, he used to do like on the back of the figure card, there was like a little fact file about the figure, the character, and each one is very in depth and tells you about their past military experience and that kind of thing, which I used to love. And I used to love the fact.
I used to cut that and stick with it. But
I used to love it because it would tell you so much about the character. They trains with like French Foreign Legion or whatever, and did this, fought in. And obviously at the time it was in the 80s and that, so they were obviously hark back to like Vietnam and stuff. So a lot of them had fought in Vietnam or in Algeria and places like that. And I loved that. It's great because it gave continuity to real life, and I just like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
That's all right. And the other storyline back in those days that I wanted to mention was do you ever read the comics? No, you're not really a comic person, but they had like one where Cobra actually had a town. They actually over to pretty much Springfield, yeah. Yeah, I know. And that had like the Crimson Guards and they were sort of, a lot of them were undercover and things like that. And again, they were portrayed as not just cannon fodder.
That's in the cartoon, as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
Same story.
So Marvel, we had obviously the American run of. Actually, I think that was an American storyline, that one. But eventually, obviously, Marvel didn't sort of lost the license to G.I. Joe. Most recently, it's in a publisher called IDW, and the comics are a lot more. They're a lot more adult based, not adult based, but they're kind of a lot more.
Hard,
realistic,
gritty.
Kind of, yeah.
They're
they're more violent. They're more for a mature reader. They kind of they don't read like the sort of cartoons, do. And you've kind of got obviously you've got the changing roster of time. Obviously, it tends to focus. A lot of it tends to focus on Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, because they're probably the most popular characters. I did just want to kind of, they still got this, there's a number of titles to this day that are still being published. I wanted to briefly talk about, you mentioned it earlier on about Transformers, because the G.I.Joe does have some crossover, and there was actually a crossover in the cartoon. So in the comics as well, there's been a lot of crossovers with Transformers, a number of different times. So they kind of, it's the most closely linked series. They never really, in the cartoons, there's one time, but in the comics, they quite often sort of end up being on the sort of, in the same sort of universe.
So they do a cartoon with them.
In a Transformers cartoon, it was based on the later series of Transformers. They don't specifically say it's Cobra, but there's it's set in the future a little bit, and you basically got Cobra Commander, and it's voiced by, I think it's Chris Larter who did the voice, and he's got the same mirrored face and everything like that. And it's basically, his story is when the Transformers' minds get kind of put into human bodies, and it's Cobra Commander, but they call him Snake, and so they never actually say he's Cobra Commander, but right at the end he goes Cobra at the end. So it's obviously it's meant to be Cobra Commander. So that is the only real sort of crossover you had in the cartoons, but it's kind of, to me, it sounded like the Transformers were kind of set almost after G.I. Joe. That's how I sort of looked at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that, you know, I don't want to spend too long on the comics because there's a fair bit to go through. We'll talk. We've just done a review of the G.I. Joe Retaliation film, so we're not going to talk too much about that film. So what's our review of that? I want to talk very, very briefly about the first G.I. Joe film.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of that? Very, very briefly.
Didn't like it at all.
Mm.
No, I thought it was too. It reminded me of like Men in Black, stroke Independence Day, and I didn't like it's too futuristic. I didn't like the fact that that suit he was wearing, and I just didn't like it. It was. I think it should be more military based and like a, you know, I don't know. If I was directing it, it would be like more like a war film, but against Cobra, and I'd make it
Can't be a TriStar.
violent and blood and guts and yeah, gritty basically. So.
What about you?
No, I didn't like the first one. I thought it was crap. Really, it was
There was a futuristic aircraft
and
as
it
well.
didn't really.
I don't like that.
It didn't have any.
Why can't they just have conventional aircraft?
I certainly.
You know?
They didn't have any sort of you know, relevance to the comics or the cartoon series. There was no kind of nothing really. That it was just like some bog standard action film, if you ask me. That
Yeah.
It was just called G.I. Joe. It was no Cobra Commander looked naff in it. Destro didn't look very good in it.
Because I was
It was
maybe not
not
quite
very
as a hardcore fan of G.I.Joe than you two guys, although I didn't think it was a great one, I didn't mind it too badly as just a sort of, you know, a kind of cheesy action film. I did prefer the second one, although I don't think it's a great movie. But I don't think the G.I. Joe was a terrible film. I think it could have been worse. Personally, it wasn't great. I've only watched it twice, but you know, I don't think it was as bad as people sort of like say. That's just, you know, that's just me. There was, I mean, watching it the second time. I watched it just before we watched Retaliation, but you know, it's not great. It's not very good, but it's not completely shit. Is what I'm saying. Well, I just want to talk about before we wrap up, really, and I want to kind of just talk about who are your two main. Let's go three top G.I. Joe characters from any of the G.I. Joe Action Force backlog. All right, top three.
Are we talking G.I. Joe or Cobra?
Either.
Either, right.
Yeah.
Either.
Any type of character. All right. So.
I like Zartan. I like him in the graphic novels and the comics. He's quite hard and he's a layered character. Zartan. I think also I like. So from a comic perspective, I like Zartan. From an action figure perspective, I like the Cobra Eels. Because I like all the equipment you get with them, and I think they look cool, and I like the fact that they're highly trained specialists in their field and a military elite basically.
And they float in the bath.
And
He's shy.
they get the back screw gets rusted, but yeah. So that's two, and I think I don't know. I quite like Lieutenant Falcon because he's a Green Beret.
Chris.
I like again the equipment you get with him and the figure.
I like Firefly because I think he's quite a mysterious character, and he looks cool, especially the figure. The figure was always cool. He's grey, camo gear. Probably would go with Zartan as well, because again, great figure. And then just
colour.
Just a cool, yeah. He actually changed with the sun, didn't he? Which was quite cool. And probably have to go someone like Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, yeah.
He was cool.
He's quite cool.
Yeah.
Fair enough. My number one character, Snow Job. Just because of that name.
It's quite funny.
No, not really. But no, it was a good name. But he was a bugger to find as a figure. I never had the one thing I never had was Snow
I
Joe.
don't think anyone.
I
did.
think maybe that was because I didn't release him in the UK because I was like, hang on a second. But I never saw that character.
That's maybe why you never saw
No, I
it.
didn't think about it. Oh, he's really rare. I just didn't release him and I thought someone was like, wait a second. Anyway, so, but in figure wise, the one I did like, and he's probably got also a bit of a dodgy name, Blowtorch. But he was quite hard to find. Well, I did actually manage to pick him up.
Yeah, you got actually, wasn't
So I liked Blowtorch because I thought he was a really good figure. He had the sort of like the removable mask and had a flamethrower and stuff. I liked him. I liked. I want to say Firefly because I did like his figure as well. But I'm kind of basing mine all on the toys, to be honest. I like Quick Kick from the comics. Really from him. So there's some stories involving Quick Kick that I kind of enjoyed. And number 3 is going to be a tie for me. I like Scrap Iron because he got a cool missile launcher with him in this figure. So that was a cool little accessory.
He was a good figure. Wasn't he?
And I like the Crimson Guard. That's a sort of, not a character exactly, but as one of the many sort of Cobra divisions you had in their thing. I like they look smart. They were meant to be like the sort of like the
Again, elite.
Yeah.
Another one I go probably is the snow serpent.
Yeah,
he
They
was
were
cool.
good. Again, there's
top of the field, isn't it? Top
Yeah.
of the field of Arctic.
within
Top of the field.
different.
But to me, the Crimson Guard were the top of the best of the best because they didn't have a particular speciality. They were just.
Yeah.
So one last thing. Who was the worst character in G.I. Joe? In your opinion, just the one worst character that you just didn't like. We're talking personal preference. Who you just didn't like. I'll start Shipwreck because he was in every bloody episode of that cartoon show. And I just did not understand why. He looked like he should have been out in the YMCA.
Yeah, he was a bit camp,
club,
and he sounded like Jack Nicholson. But yeah,
I didn't understand it. He was such a lame-looking character, and they had him on nearly enough every episode.
He was pretty much in everyone.
in like a World War II kind of American sailors gear. Yeah, I
He
mean,
didn't stand out.
I
from the
quite
crowd
like
at
him
all,
as a
did he?
figure, but
That
I
figure
like
was
the
pretty
fact you
shite
get
as well.
Polly the parrot with him that clips on his shoulder.
And he got a pistol, didn't he? Like an
Yeah,
old
like
bloody.
an old flintlock pistol. But he's
Who
alright.
who was your worst character or figure or type of?
I didn't like Torpedo very much.
I don't remember that one.
He was a diver. He was black, black wetsuit, and he was just the face was a bit not very good.
Very good.
I'd have to go with Bazooka.
Yeah,
That's
because
it.
with his basketball t-shirt on.
Yeah, he just didn't look very good. And again, they portrayed him as a bit of a dumbass in the
In
cartoons.
the cartoon, yeah, thick.
But in Resolute, they actually kill him off, don't they?
I can't. I've only seen that once.
Yeah, they do.
Very
It's
good.
quite good. I like the fact they do that.
They kill him off. Yeah.
Fair enough. Any other thing you just want to wrap up by sort of any other thoughts on G.I. Joe as a franchise?
Yeah, I think it's a great franchise, and I think for.
Where would you like to see it go from here?
I don't know. I kind of like how it was in the 80s because that's what I grew up on. So I'm kind of nostalgic about it. And that's why I like when they released the 25th anniversary. I kind of like those rather than the ones they've released since, because.
You weren't really into the film figures, were you?
No, I didn't. I don't collect the film figures because
Would you
not
collect,
really
would you
interested.
collect any of those retaliation figures?
The only one I'm a Cobra Commander, because he looks quite good. But
Would you get the Rock on a figure? Or Bruce, they've done a Bruce, isn't it?
Probably not.
I used to have a crush on Baroness. I'm talking about the not the film. She was hot. Chicks with glasses. Anyway, we'll have to get that in there. Chris, any final thoughts?
Nope.
We'll just leave it at that one. He was more of a Scarlet man. Alright then, leave us your thoughts about G.I. Joe / Action Force and where you'd like to see it go. Who was your favourite character as well? Leave us a comment and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Yo, Joe!